Hey everybody, good morning. So for my Monday morning video this week, I want to talk quickly about the papers, most of which I have read and graded and put up on the Canvas page where you can see them. And then also talk a little bit about Beowulf and the Dragon, the third major episode and final episode of the poem that we'll look at the beginning of this week before trying to connect the Dragon episode with some moments in Rowling and Tolkien. So first, to start with the papers. So the thing I want to say in the beginning is that I was really pleased with them. I thought you guys did a great job. I was glad that to see a variety of topics and materials. I thought there were some great papers on Rowling, some great papers on Tolkien, some great papers on Gorman, and on Beowulf. So that was terrific. I think that there's two sort of um, major issues that as a group you guys might want to think about. And the most important one, and this is something that I'll reiterate when we come to the second paper in the course, is it's really important to work keeping in mind the difference between summary and argument. Summary is, or plot summary, is a description of what happens in a text. So if you write that, Harry Potter goes with Ron and Hermione to the Chamber of Secrets, you're describing an episode in the second book of Harry Potter. If you say that Frodo goes to Mordor in order to throw the ring into the cracks of doom, you're describing an episode. If you say that Beowulf fights the dragon, that's fine, but not really the point of a close reading paper. What a close reading paper does is it sort of presumes that we already understand the plot. So plot questions like who is doing something, where are they going, what are they doing it for? Those are all, like shared knowledge, but not the point of a close reading or analytical paper. The point of an analytical paper is not summary, but analysis. In other words, not what happens and who does it, but so what, why is it important? Why should we care? And in particular, why should we care, now? In many cases, long after these stories have been written. Tolkien writes his story in the 1930s, and a little bit after. The Harry Potter books are more recent, but Beowulf is 1,000 years old. Why should we care about, the way the Beowulf poet describes Grendel or Grendel's mother 1,000 years later? So your argument, and this is the key part of your paper, is not making an argument about what happens, which we can all agree on, but making an argument about why we should care, why it's important, why it's still important today, however many years after these texts have been written. And again, the key terms here are going to be things like symbolism and representation. In other words, Grendel's mother represents an exiled woman excluded from community. Harry Potter represents, the virtue of self-sacrifice or the virtue of loyalty. Frodo also might represent the virtue of sacrifice or a willingness to suffer in order to benefit other people. Beowulf might represent, kind of machismo or kind of heroic labor or heroic willingness to risk oneself. Those are claims about meaning, and the thing that's distinctive about them is that you can disagree. If you can't disagree with the thesis you're making in your paper, then it's not a very good thesis. If you're going to make an argument that, like, while it might seem that Dumbledore is a good guy, Dumbledore is kind of a monster because he's ultimately cruel to Harry and willing to see Harry killed in order to defeat Voldemort. That is an argument which I think has a lot of evidence to support it, but it's also an argument that you could debate. You could say, well, no, Dumbledore is like doing his best, similarly with Beowulf, you could say Beowulf is a kind of an idiot, frat boy, or you can say that Beowulf is actually putting his particular talents and skills in the service of the community. So again, something that's debatable is the key to having a good thesis. And I think that that's something we can work on together. It's not easy. Writing a good thesis is the hardest thing that we do in close reading textual analysis papers, but with something that we'll work on together over the course of the semester. All right, now, the fun thing for the first half of this week is the dragon. And as we get started on the third adventure, I want to notice two significant things. One is that dragons are different kinds of monsters, that dragons come with a host of associations. It's a kind of archetypical monster in classical fantasy literature. The idea of the dragon is actually much older than Beowulf, even. Um, and dragons who sit on hoards represent greed and an unwillingness to allow valuable items to circulate in the world. Remember, the dragon gets mad because someone steals one cup from his massive hoard of treasure. So the dragon represents the kind of greed of an elite class, including a social class or a human class, that won't allow value to be shared among the wider community. We might say that the dragon is the sort of ultimate representative of the 1%, right? Who just like keep all the money, all the gold, all the treasure to themselves and don't share it out. And we might contrast the dragon here to a king like Hrothgar, whose main project is to give things to his people. Hrothgar and his queen Wealhtheow in Heorot are constantly like giving people presents. They give Beowulf presents. They pass the mead and the beer out to everyone. Like the project of being a good king is to distribute value. The dragon, who's a kind of anti-king, hoards value, which means he's a particularly interesting adversary for Beowulf when he himself is king. And it's important to remember that in the third combat with monsters, the combat with the dragon, Beowulf is now the king of Geatland. He is no longer a servant or a kind of ally of King Hrothgar, but he is king himself, and he has the responsibility to defend the kingdom. So we might want to think about how that changes the way we understand his heroic actions. All right, look forward to hearing from you this week.